Hey everybody, Jessica Morrison here with Ferris Property Group. We have a special guest today with a new announcement. Bob Tompkins from Greenville, South Carolina. How are you, sir?
I'm doing really good, Jessica. Thank you for having me on. Looking forward to chatting with you for a bit.
Yeah. So you have some news that you're sitting on. Tell us all about it.
Yeah. So obviously, if people paid attention to my news feed today, they'll see that I've just changed brokerages. So I just moved from Remax to Real Broker. Um, so kind of an up and coming brokerage. It's been around for about 7, 8 years. Kind of similar model to EXP, minus some of that culture that maybe some people don't love. So joining over with Tim Macy and some other really good people there. So excited about that change.
Yeah, so I think for the average consumer, kind of help us understand why is why do agents switch companies and what led you to specifically choose Real?
Yeah, so I mean, I think agents can switch companies for a lot of reasons. I think you hear a lot from people that if they feel like they're not getting enough value from their current broker, you see a switch. That's not my case. I don't feel like I wasn't being served well at Remax. I feel like Remax is a great company that served me well for the time that I was there. But for me, kind of moving forward, want to be in an environment that really shows value to people with some influence, which is something that I don't like calling myself an influencer. I really hate that word, but it's kind of hard to ignore the fact that I do have some influence in the industry, and being a part of a model that rewards that influence by being able to help grow a brand. It's very appealing to me. And then Real Broker on in addition to being able to build some sort of revenue share with the company, being able to grow stock options over time as the company grows. It's also a company that, because of its structure, it encourages collaboration amongst agents, which is something that is hard to find at any brokerage because it's almost like, oh, I'm competing against this person in my market. Somebody lives 5 states away from you but works for the same broker. It's really hard to do content with them because there needs to be some sort of financial motivation to do that. But in the old way of brokerages, the agent would be paying out of pocket to do that. So it's for me to look at where I can build some sort of residual income that allows me to collaborate with other people, because we're benefiting together when we grow the brand, is a very attractive thing for me.
I love it. I think yes, all of that, it just screams innovation. And I think that as an agent, it's really important, um, speaking to consumers watching this, that you select an agent who not only is innovative in their approach for how they serve you, but that the company is also innovative in how they are marketing their brand, what steps are they taking, what's their vision for 5, 10 years out of the industry, and how are they moving ahead of the curve to not only meet that demand, but make your life easier as a consumer. And there are certainly some very brand worthy names that we could think of that are already doing some of those things. So it's important that when you interview, when you do your research and partnering with a prospective client or broker in this situation, again, that innovation is important because it will ultimately make you more money, which is pretty important. So, Bob, tell us a little bit about Greenville, South Carolina. What is going on in your market and how are you help setting your clients up for success?
Yeah, so Greenville, super cool town. If you've never been here before, it's definitely worth visiting. The city's built around the Reedy River, so there's a waterfall literally in the center of downtown. So super cool kind of vibe to that. We're one of the fastest growing markets in the country. I can't remember the exact number, but as far as percentage growth, um, as of like 2019. I know it's a couple years back, but this is the numbers I know. We were like the fourth fastest growing city in the country. So lots of growth down here. It's nice because of the low taxes, and you're able to kind of get a little bit more bang for your buck when you're purchasing a home. So people love that. So it's a great growing town. I've loved living here. I moved up to the upper part of the state of South Carolina when I was 18, went to college up here, and then stuck around afterwards. So I grew up in Columbia, which is about 2 hours away, and made my way here and fell in love with it. So I didn't want to leave. Um, the market here is, I think it's because of how fast it's growing. It's very much like a lot of the other markets, to where we've got way more buyers than sellers. So you're seeing tons of multiple offer situations, tons of competition. One of the probably the positives, though, because we're such a fast growing community, a lot of builders have kind of prioritized Greenville as a place to build homes. So we do have a lot of new construction options, which helps balance our market a little bit. But when you get into resales, it's just as crazy as it is anywhere else. So it's funny. I think probably the last 10 buyers I've worked with, like 6 of them have been new construction just because it ended up being the easiest option for us. But I mean, the market's been crazy. So as far as how I've been serving my clients to make sure they're well positioned, one of the things I've always keyed as a major component of my business from day one is just being fully transparent and honest with my clients. So when we get into a situation where there is multiple offers, they know, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this on your interviews, but I'm a no bullshit kind of guy. So like when we sit down and we're talking through things, I'm like, look, if you want to win the offer, this is the sort of thing you need to do. And I walk them through it, plain and simple. Like you're gonna have to go over asking. You got to cut the closing costs out. I know these were things that you wanted. You didn't want to pay over asking price. You didn't want to pay closing costs. But if you're going to win a house in this market, you're going to have to. So I think that having people in the right mindset right now is extremely important. A lot of us, I know some veterans in the business that get caught up having the same conversation for 10, 15 years of like, oh yeah, we're going to get you the house at the price you want. We're going to get these different things as a part of the contracts, different contingencies. We're going to get them just the way you want them. And that's not the case right now. Right now, sellers are winning and buyers are not. So if you get the house in this market, you won as a buyer. If that is the only way you win right now is if you just walk away from the closing table with keys. So I think having those conversations is very important right now. So people don't have a misconception of what they're walking into.
Oh, for sure. And I'm just over here affirming everything that you're saying. I think first and foremost in any market, setting client expectations is critical. Um, it just really helps mitigate a lot of the emotion that comes up. I mean, unless you're working with an investor, there's going to be emotion involved. And so helping people, I think people who are watching this as buyers might be discouraged hearing that, like just knowing that the competition is really fierce. And I don't, I kind of like am hesitant to feed into the new construction aspect because that's been my secret sauce so far this year. Cause it's not like necessarily an off market property, but it's not like it's attracting a ton of attention among consumers to where like, oh, like this house popped up, I can go see it. Versus like we as the agent know which communities are an option. So it's kind of like, I don't want to say it's kind of like a for sale by owner situation where you know of off market properties, but if nothing else, I feel like it's a great opportunity for consumers to kind of protect their best interests. I mean, it is going to be a higher dollar per square foot, but I would argue, if you are a client and you're going to have to waive your inspection or asking for repairs on a really old house, having to pay the difference in an appraisal if it doesn't appraise, like seriously consider new construction just because, I mean, at least you're getting a brand new house that has to pass those inspections and you have a warranty. So
Right.
that's exciting.
Yeah, that's one of the things about new construction that I guess a lot of people don't think about is you get into one. Typically, this is not a promise to anyone, but typically in the first 3 to 4 years, you really don't have to do much to it. Like you're able to go in, just kind of live there. And with an older home, like I mean, I've been in my house. Me and my wife bought it a year and a half ago, and we've probably already pumped like 5 grand into it. Like just because you get in and you start finding stuff out. Like we had a fireplace guy out here today telling us like, hey, look, yeah, the damper's gone. Like we're gonna have to get in here and redo some stuff. So it's you start running into those things once you take ownership that with new construction there's way less of. But the key on one thing, when buyers, when they hear that there's so much movement and they're gonna have to outbid other people and they're not going to get all the, maybe the different parts of the contract exactly the way they want to. Um, People can get discouraged, but one of the positives right now is that interest rates are at a 30-year low. So, people that want to buy right now, really their purchase power is better than it was like 4 or 5 years ago. You're able to do so much more with your money, even though prices may be a little inflated on some houses. It's not like you're having to spend more money because the month to month cost is actually lower than things were 5 years ago on a house $50,000 less. So, that's how everything's kind of balanced itself. And I think that's an important thing. My mortgage friends will appreciate me for saying that, but that's an important thing to note when we think about inventory.
No, for sure. I think I've heard it said that where rates are at right now, or at least towards the end of 2020, based on the payment, that it's putting house prices back to where payment wise it would be as if you bought in 2018. Does that sound correct?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So, I mean, definitely, I think I'd love to hear your opinion on this. Um, Same vein of conversation. I think there's some concern in the market among buyers that, or sellers who are considering selling, but then they're going to have to obviously be in the buyer boat. Do you think that there's going to be a massive market crash, or that houses are super inflated and that we're going to see some type of correction?
I think that there's um, slight inflation. So I think that you're going to see a market correction. And I know people are concerned about equity loss. And I think that this again factors into the conversation with people about being honest with them up front. The conversation I always have, especially first time home buyers or people that are kind of testing out an area, like they're saying, "Hey, we want to come to Greenville for a couple years, see if we love it." Just being frank with them, if you only expect to be in a place for a couple years, buying a house traditionally is not the best route for you to go, because you're only going to, if you take the standard rate of appreciation on a house, which is about 3% every year, and then you're paying, antitrust laws. So if you're paying between 4 and 7% on commission on whoever you hire, like whatever you're paying, even with that standard rate of appreciation, your taxes and fees that are associated with it, you're taking a loss in the first 2 years. Like there's no way. So if you're coming, that's the traditional, standard rate of appreciation. Right now, we're not dealing with that. I've got people that bought a house 2.5 years ago and they netted 30 grand. So it's like that we're in a market that is definitely appreciating faster than it probably should be. So there should be the concern of equity loss in the next couple of years. But if you're purchasing a home, it should always be a 3-year plus plan. So if you're buying a house with a 3-year plus plan, even if there is some sort of correction, you should be able to look at 4 or 5 years down the road and not be taking a loss. Which, if you're buying a house with the intention of being somewhere for 8 to 10 years, you're going to have equity gain. There's no way, even with a step back in the market and a step back in pricing, you're not losing money. You're going to make money over time. But I think with any sort of investment, you see these times of like peaks and valleys as things rise. I think we are on one of those peaks. So things will kind of scale back and dip a little bit, but you're not looking at a crash. It won't be anything like 2008, where people saw like a 20% loss in their property value. I think if we see a 5 or 6% loss, that's probably more in line with where it should be. And then we'll get that back over the next few years. I just think that we saw a very quick inflation that probably shouldn't have happened so fast.
Yeah, I kind of look at it in terms of like a stock chart where you have this massive increase or interest. And I think appreciation will continue to happen, but it won't be as aggressive. Whereas in our market, we're looking at sometimes 11 to 13%, depending on the county, which is super aggressive. And then, you would argue that that's not necessarily sustainable. So maybe, next year it comes down to 7 or 8%, but it's still growing in appreciation. It's just not as fast. I think the other part of that too is going to be the foreclosures. I've heard some people suggest that bank owned or foreclosures will be retained by banks and used as rentals, which I don't know. Like, I've heard one agent say that. I don't know if that's factual or not.
I'd be surprised. I mean, just from what we know about banks, I mean, we look at 2008. Banks didn't hold anything as rentals. They turned around and sold everything. So, I mean, I think we get into a foreclosure market. History is our best indicator of what banks are going to do, and they didn't do that in the past. I'd be shocked because I mean, you're talking about big banks like Wells Fargo would have to, who hold a lot of mortgages, would have to turn around and completely create a new property management division of their bank to be able to do that. Like, it's just not feasible. I think at scale, you may see some smaller banks, some smaller servicers that hold mortgage loans. They might do that to try and cut losses. But I don't think the big banks are definitely not going to do that. It's not in their best interest.
I was definitely surprised to hear that because it sounds very unconventional, especially for a bank to sit on something like that. But um, if nothing else, though, I think it's really important for people to understand when we hear the terms correction or crash. Like, I think that's immediately what comes to mind is the 2008 scenario, which we've already expressed is not, we don't have a crystal ball, but, from
Well,
our research doesn't.
yeah, and I think it's understanding how it happened. Is 2008 was predatory lending. I mean, you know, this is where my lender friends won't like me, but this is lenders were very, aggressive in loans, and created. I mean, there was hardly any regulation, so it was easy to create that bubble. That bubble was created and then it burst. And here, it's not a bubble. I mean, you've got, this is basic supply and demand. There's no inventory, so people are willing to pay more as long as they understand the consequence of paying more, which is, hey, you may have to be in this house a couple more years before you see the same equity gains that you would normally expect in a traditional market. As long as people understand that going in, then you're not looking at some sort of, market crash.
Mm.
Because this is one that's being created by the consumer. Any sort of inflation in 2008, it was being created by the industry. So it's two very different situations.
Yes. Yes. And thank you for clarifying. I hope that everybody finds that helpful. So, what would you say are things that you're doing to help? I mean, we've already talked about setting expectations. Let's focus on the person watching this who might be softly interviewing you as an agent. Maybe they're thinking of locating to Greenville, South Carolina. What would you say helps A, set your area apart from others, and then B, maybe what makes you special as an agent?
Yeah. So the area, it's a quality of life thing. I I don't want to get too like COVID political, but like when you look at the way our area has kind of handled things, I mean, if you're a mask wearer, you're probably not going to love South Carolina, very conservative red state. But the ability to kind of live your life freely is very nice. I mean, people don't really judge you for what you want to do, which is great. The city itself, Greenville, is beautiful. It's kind of tucked conveniently to a lot of things. So we're 2 hours from Charlotte, 2 hours from Atlanta. You're 3 hours to the beach, like an hour and a half to the mountains. So we're in this area that you can get to a lot of different things very quickly. And then we're a foodie town. So we've got actually more restaurants per capita than any city in the US. So if you like to go out to eat and you like to have good food, I think I'm a pretty good indicator of that you can find it here. So those are some very appealing things about Greenville to me. It's why I love living here. Plus, the cost of living is much lower. But Greenville being kind of this hub between two big cities, there's higher earning potentials with a lower cost of living. So that means more money in your pocket, more freedom to be able to do the things that you want to do. So those, all are contributing factors to why I love this area. As far as me, I grew up in real estate. So one of the reasons I always say, I'm a great hire is that my mom's been doing this for over 20 years. I grew up in a household where all I heard was real estate lingo my entire life. So I almost joke around and say I understand contracts and I understand real estate transactions kind of like the back of my hand. Like it comes very naturally to me. But then I also understand that this is one of the more stressful things people do in their life. They only do it a few times. It can weigh on people a lot. And because of my understanding of the business and then my personality on top of it, I'm able to make this way less stressful. My clients have a lot more fun in the buying process or in the selling process because they know they're in good hands. And then I just take good, genuine care of them. So there's not this, you know, tension of somebody who hasn't been in the business that long that they don't really know if they know what they're doing. And then they're super tight, high strung. I'm the furthest from that. If people want a high strung realtor, you know, suit and tie, like all business in their suit, I'm not that guy for them. I'd actually prefer, if that's the agent you want, that you don't call me. I do not want to work with you. So, you know, but if you want that more casual person that is more laid back, that is who I am. And that's how I treat my clients. So I feel like it leads to a very enjoyable transaction experience.
Yep. I think that there is a pressure in our industry to look a certain way or like almost, and I think you could say that the success could apply to any more corporate or professional based job. Um, like you have, like I think there's an image that agents are expected to shoot for among themselves. Like, oh, we tend to put on a pedestal like agents that sell thousands of homes a year or drive the really nice car and all of that jazz. And I think at the end of the day, what the consumer cares about is A, are you a nice person to work with? Are you going to do what you say you're going to do? And are you going to help me get the best deal or make the most amount of money in buying or selling a house? It's really what they care about. I mean, and I think as long as you're a good person, and obviously, like, you shouldn't, I mean, Florida people might disagree with me, like showing up to a house in flip flops is probably not a good idea. But I think being true to who you are is more important because people can more than ever pick up on a fake or just this not real personality. And like, this is a very, like you said, stressful time. And we're walking people through that and with them. So that's awesome that you've figured out how you want to do business because there's
Yeah.
more than enough people out there to fit a different mold.
I love the flip flop comment because even though I hate this saying because I think it's cheesy as all get out, but the whole saying of your vibe attracts your tribe. If you're the type of person that ends up wearing flip flops like to a showing or to a closing, then you're going to attract the same clients that wear flip flops to courtrooms. Like those aren't the clients you want, you know? So even though like I'm casual, like there's not flip flops to closings. Like that's, you know, because those are the people you're going to end up attracting. And, you know, those are the people that don't get paperwork to a lender. So that's, you know, you got to be careful with how you market yourself.
Yeah, and we don't want to come across as discriminating because we will work with anybody, but I think
Oh,
it's
we will.
like,
We will. But I'm just saying, like the
yeah,
way you present yourself is the sort of person you're going to attract. So
yes,
I mean, that's just the thought process. I'll work with anybody that calls my phone. But if I want to attract the people that are most like me, then I need to make sure I market myself appropriately.
yeah. I think another way of saying that um, is again going back to setting client expectations. Like, this
Mhm.
is who I am, this is how I do business, and hopefully we click and we're gonna work great together. And if not, then and like I don't want to make a mountain out of a molehill either. But I think for those watching, it's just really important that you enjoy the personality of the person that you're working with because it will just make that process more fun. Like, I think sometimes television shows might make an agent out to be a certain mold, but gratefully there's a lot of different ways to do business. And
Yep.
ultimately, like, we want this to be a fun process for people. Bob, I would love to get your feedback on maybe prospective sellers who are thinking of going for sale by owner because they know the market's hot. What's your take on that?
So a couple things. The first thing is for sale by owner, and this is from a legal sense. They don't know what they're doing. So if you put your house on the market, a lot of people think that all selling a house amounts to is just getting somebody to come in the door and make you an offer. And that is step one of selling a house, like marketing to try and get someone to bring an offer. But between contract to closing, you've got a 30 to 45-day window with a lot of check boxes that have to be checked off, a lot of different ways for the seller to lose money over the course of that. People look at it from a, what's my gross on this house? What's my offer? Am I being offered 250 or am I being offered 245? They miss all these other parts of the contract. You've got repairs. What happens if you run into appraisal problems? What lender is being used? How much are they charging in closing costs? How much is the seller having to pay of that? There's so many different factors that go in that if you don't manage them all correctly, you can end up netting way less money at the end of the day than if you had somebody that can help you navigate all those middle parts of the transaction. Then the other part is the seller, maybe they called one agent, got an idea for a price, or they had a personal appraisal done, 6 months ago. They have an idea of what their house is worth. They don't really know what their house is worth though. So they can use whatever data they can find to come up with a list price. And a lot of times, they get those offers. Somebody offers them, 1,000 or 2,000 above asking. Oh, I'm good. I'm going to take that. The house very well could have been priced incorrectly, and with the proper marketing could have bid, you could have 10 to 12 bids in this current market that bid each other up and really got you a much better net on your house. People don't see that. They just say, hey, this is the price I want. I can put it on the market and get it myself. If that's what somebody does, then they think they're making the most money. And that's where for sale by owners will go and they'll talk to people. Oh, I didn't need an agent. Yeah, I only paid 3% to a buyer's agent. By the way, is idiotic because now you're paying the other side to negotiate against you without your own representation. So, for sale by owners, they think, oh, I saved 3%. Well, or they saved 2%, or they saved 2.5%, or 1%, whatever you would have been paying to a seller. I don't want to make it sound like antitrust laws, but whatever you were going to be paying, oh, I saved X amount of dollars. But did you? Like if you could have sold your house for 10 grand more and you could have had $5,000 worth of terms more favorable in the middle part of that transaction, you saved 6 grand, but you lost 15 because of it. For sale by owners need to be very aware of how much goes into a deal and how much the market knowledge and the connections within the industry can help sell a house for a much better price than just doing it on your own. Anybody can sell a house. I mean, I'm a real estate agent, and if you'd have met me 5 years ago, you'd have never thought I could sell a house. So anybody can sell a house. I mean, like it's not impossible to sell a house, but there's a lot that goes into getting where you are in the business, where I'm in the business, and the connections we've built along the way, as well as the knowledge of how to navigate deals that really can't be replicated by a for sale by owner.
Yeah, and I've heard like right now, I think there's a lot of the interest is coming from a for sale by owner perspective, like, oh, I know the market's hot. And if I throw a price up and I put it on social media, because I can put it in Facebook chatter groups or on Zillow, which has shifted since Zillow is now a brokerage, but they think, okay, well, I'll just throw it up, and if I get the price that I want, then I'm saving the commission. And then maybe I've bought or sold a few houses before, and I kind of know the process, so like easy peasy. And I think one argument for that is just because you can get your house in front of a lot of people doesn't mean that those people are actually interested in buying your house. And then secondly, that they're actually qualified. So getting your home in front of real qualified people who, like the average agent right now, I heard a statistics shared yesterday, has 5 buyers for one house. So here in our local area in Indianapolis, there's 8,000 realtors. So that means that you have 40,000 possible candidates for your home, and they're all going to be pre-approved. And like you just take it a step further. And then let's look at the security aspect. We're in a pandemic. So how are you taking precautions to protect your family against COVID? And also, like, again, just qualifying those people, because if you leave the house and that person doesn't have an agent, how do you know that they're not going to go through your belongings? Like, those are just very real conversations. So yeah, any other thoughts on that, Bob?
Well, no, I think you hit it on the head that there's like even in me talking about it, there's things about just hiring a realtor that don't even come to my mind immediately, even as a realtor, like a super lot box keeps a detailed record of everyone who's entered your home. Like you don't have that if you're a for sale by owner. Maybe you've got a piece of pen and paper and you're taking notes and trying to get people's contact information as they come in and out. Like this, the level of security so much higher. I mean, it's things like that that people don't think about. And then, when they deal with 20 showings on their house and they're managing all those calls themselves and they're having to be there to open the door for everyone because they don't want to leave a key outside, like that becomes such a hassle, taking you away from your routine of life, taking you away from your ability to make money in your job. Like that's a loss that people aren't accounting for when they enter into the process of doing it by themselves. So I think there's just so many things that, I mean, we could spend an hour talking about what for sale by owners are missing out on when they do it by themselves. So that, I mean, it's a real thing that people need to be aware of, and they don't need to go at this by themselves.
Bob, I think we might have to put a follow-up interview because I think everybody in the industry is having these conversations, and um, I think there's more credibility than, if I were to just do a simple video on like, here's the 10 bullet points on, things to think about, versus if you have agents from different parts of the country all coming together, like, yeah, like this is an issue, or, something to seriously consider. That would be, I think, really helpful to people, because I think so much of real estate, even as a realtor, is you don't know what you don't know until you find out what you don't know, and then you go figure it out. And consumers, like, I shop at Goodwill, like I want to save money just as much as the next person. um, but I've kind of just started thinking, like, if somebody says, oh, I want to go for sale by owner, it's like, oh, bless your heart. Like, you don't know what you don't know. And even if you are coming from a really good place, um, I would just probably encourage you to consider getting your license so that you are fully informed. Because that's the other part of it is, I've had conversations recently where, people have an interest in doing real estate, and, they kind of want to do it themselves. And if that's, for those listening, sounds like something you would be interested in, like, I know Bob or I would be happy to help, talk more about what it's like to have a license and the steps to get there.
Absolutely. And I think that, when we talk about all this too, you said how you shop at Goodwill. It's my wife is a penny pincher all day long. She does all her grocery shopping at Walmart. So I don't know how or how prevalent this store is, but in South Carolina we have Publix, which is, started out of Florida. I shop at Publix. I will not go to Walmart for grocery shopping. And it has to do with the experience. I go in there, everybody's kind, friendly. I talk to everyone in the meat department, the produce department. Like I know everybody that works at Publix because they're genuinely nice people, and I've gotten to know them. I enjoy shopping there. Their slogan is "Where shopping's a pleasure," and it is. Like I love going there. Walmart. Every time I step into Walmart, I'm like, I wish I hadn't come here. Like I immediately want to leave because of the shopping experience. It's not nearly what it is at Publix. I pay more for that, but I live a better quality of life because I shop there. The same thing goes for, selling your house. You can sell it for sale by owner. Like you can. You'll get it done, but you're not going to have a good time. You're going to lose money in the process. If you want a better experience and you want a better quality of life, that's why you hire a realtor at the end of the day.
Yep. And then you don't have to worry about your kids and security and being a full-time employee somewhere and haven't, like, there's just way too much to think about. So
Mhm.
Bob, I, as always, in interacting with you online, it's always a pleasure. What would be the best way for people to connect with you?
Facebook's always the easiest way. I always say if you just hop in my DMs though, like it might take me a couple days because there's message requests. If we're not already friends, like it may take a little bit to get me. Also, my cell phone number, we're all agents. Our numbers are posted online. So like you go in, find my number and text me, like super easy to do that too. That's probably the easiest way to get immediately in front of me. But I love talking to people, love helping any way I can. So if people want to reach out, I definitely encourage it.
Awesome. And if you're an agent watching this and trying to figure out what in the world Bob is doing by switching companies, I'm sure he would be happy to talk more about the real model and see if that would be a good fit for you. But Bob, it was a pleasure to connect, and I hope that everyone has found this to be valuable. We'll have to put another longer for sale by owner video up because I think that that would just be so helpful for
Yeah.
our industry. Any closing remarks?
No, I mean, other than if you follow me on social media, check out the Bob and Brad Show. Me and Brad McCallum have a podcast together where we talk about branding in real estate. So we like to think that that's really helpful for people. So I'd love to see more people subscribe to that. But other than that, Jessica, thank you for having me on. I've enjoyed this conversation and hope people can get some value out of it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone.
Absolutely.